voters to decide if the state of Texas will
Mr. Speaker,
ever have an
for what
inheritance
purpose?
tax.
does the gentleman yield for a question?
Yes, I will.
Gentleman yields for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Geren. Is there currently a proposal in the legislature to institute an estate tax?
No, sir, there is not that I'm aware of.
So your HJR is banning a tax that doesn't exist, is that correct?
It is putting it to the voters to decide if they want to ever have this tax or not. And if it goes in the Constitution, as you're well aware, it makes it even more difficult for that to happen.
And so it doesn't exist currently. We're asking voters to ban something that doesn't exist.
That's exactly right, just as we did on the income tax, Mr. Talarico.
Are you aware that it costs nearly $200,000 in taxpayer funds to put this question to the voters?
Actually, it does not cost that much for the election will cost that much, but this will not be the only thing on the ballot.
And this will be part of that election?
Excuse me?
This will be part of that election if we
That'll be
approve
part
this
of the constitutional election, which will be held in November, but there will be several things on the ballot, so the cost would be shared amongst all of those.
Are you aware that average Texans pay more in taxes than the average Californian?
I'm not aware of that, but if you tell me that's true, I'll believe you.
Working class and middle class Texans pay more as a percentage of their income in state taxes than poor and working class Californians do.
That's why I want this on the ballot, so when a person passes away, the state cannot take whatever estate that they have. The state's not able to take it away from them or from their children.
So the problem with that, though, is that this tax that you're proposing we ban only impacts the top 1% of earners.
That is not true. This one will ban any death tax. Currently, the federal death tax has an amount above which is taxed. This one, this would be, if we had one, we could set that at zero and tax everything. And so this, without a death tax, if we can never have a death tax, then no matter what your estate was valued at upon your death, it would not be subject to any taxes.
So there is no upper income to this ban. So
That's correct.
multi-millionaires who are passing on millions of dollars to their kids, to trust fund babies, they're not going to get taxed a cent.
They're not
those
going to
millions
get
of dollars
taxes
they pass
as well
on.
as the guy that works at my restaurant. When he passes away, his estate is not going to be taxed.
But your
1
bill is
cent
not,
either.
your HDR is not limited to,
It has no limits on it.
So-
That's correct.
so
on,
we're letting-
on the top or on the bottom.
right, so we're letting multimillionaires and billionaires pass on unlimited amounts of money to their trust fund baby kids without taxing that at all.
After what's left over, after the feds get their bite, yes, that's correct.
So the reason I brought up the other state comparison is because here in Texas, poor and working class Texans pay more as a percentage of their income in state taxes because we rely on sales and property taxes. And now you're proposing that we're going to get rid of the one tax that would impact the top 1% of earners. So instead of
it would impact all earners. Everyone that, when they pass, if they have any estate at all, it would not be subject to the tax.
But we already acknowledged that the federal estate tax only impacts the top 1% of earners. Actually, it's the top 0.8%
I would have to
of
agree
earners.
with. I'm not sure if that's the exact percent, but if you say it is, then I can agree
I mean,
with it.
it also just makes intuitive sense that the people who are going to be most impacted by an estate tax are going to be people with large estates.
That's
The people
correct.
who are going to be impacted by an inheritance tax are the people who are passing on a big inheritance to their kids.
That's correct.
And so instead of providing that relief to working class Texans who pay property taxes and sales taxes, what we're doing here is banning the one tax that would impact the wealthiest people in our state. And already wealthy
Mr.
people in
Talarico,
Texas.
we've already banned income tax, and income tax, I would say, would affect those people more than this would.
But Texas has never had an income tax.
And it's in the Constitution that
That's
we
right.
will not have an income tax.
But we had an inheritance tax here in Texas for most of our history. Is that not the case?
We've had it, yes.
Since the
We do not
1920s.
we don't have it now.
Right. But since the 1920s up to 2015, we had an inheritance tax that was impacting the wealthiest Texans, providing money that can then go to property tax relief for working class Texans. You're now proposing that we ban that kind of inheritance tax that impacts the wealthiest people in our state?
As I said, I'm for banning a tax on every Texan's estate. And it is not a tax that exists today in the state of Texas, but this will leave it always up to the people. And if at some point in time the legislature decides we need an inheritance tax, it can go back to the people and the people can make that decision.
So do you know if we taxed trust fund babies and heirs and heiresses, wealthy kids who didn't work for that money, if we taxed them with an inheritance tax, do you know how much revenue that could generate for the state of Texas?
I don't have any idea because we don't have that tax, and so I don't know at what percentage that would be taxed. I have no idea.
Well,
and I don't believe that you can even extrapolate that because you don't. I mean, you're going to have to come up with an imaginary number to do that.
Well, 18 states, including red states like Kentucky and Nebraska,
I'm not
have
really worried
these
about
inheritance
18
taxes.
I'm not worried about 18 other states. I only worry about the state of Texas, Mr. Talarico.
And so I'm looking at some of the larger states. It generates over $1 billion a year by taxing trust fund babies, taxing heirs and heiresses. That's $1 billion that could go to property tax relief for working class Texans.
It could go wherever the legislature decided it should go, Mr.
So,
Talarico. That's correct.
Mr. Geren, let's just say we use that $1 billion to increase the homestead tax exemption and lower property taxes. Do you know how much money that would save the average Texan?
I'm not aware.
About $250. And I think pretty much every Texan would rather cut their property taxes by $250 rather than give a tax break to millionaires and billionaires. Would you not agree?
Mr. Talarico, that's assuming that the legislature would use that money for a tax break. And as you're well aware, sometimes we do and sometimes we apply it to other things.
So Texas has the second most regressive tax system in the country because we put so much of the burden on low-income and middle-income Texans. And wealthy Texans have it pretty good. They have the lowest taxes of any state in the country. And so now with this bill, we're proposing that we give even more relief to the wealthiest Texans at the expense of working Texans who are being priced out of their homes, whose property taxes are rising through the roof.
I would disagree that we're giving them relief because they're not paying it now. We're just making sure they don't get it. So relief to me would mean we'd be helping them with the tax they're already paying.
Well, you're banning us from ever having an inheritance tax.
No, sir, I'm not. I'm leaving it to the people of the state of Texas and future legislatures.
To try to ban something that doesn't exist.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And it's a tax that we had for most of our history and didn't seem to hurt our economic growth at all. Most Texans work hard for the money they make. They pay a lot in taxes to the state. Do you think it's fair that some people can inherit millions or even billions of dollars and then not pay a cent of state taxes on that money?
That is the purpose of this, so there would be no tax on anything that they inherited. That is correct, sir.
One last question, Mr. Geren. Do you think we've given enough handouts to wealthy people this session?
I'm not certain that we've given any handouts, Mr. Talarico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.